This is Hall of Famer Marshall Faulk, and you're listening to the Fantasy Footballers.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome back, everybody. Oh, my goodness. Whew. Christmas is over. Or has it just begun?
For some people, Christmas just got here.
Like you?
Well, I hope.
We don't know.
I hope. The present is under the tree, and it looks really big. But I haven't opened it yet. It could be a gag gift.
I had to start.
Shook it? Yeah, I haven't shaken it.
I had to start the show as soon as possible this morning because I just didn't want to be musing about all the happenings of fantasy football, your potential championship in one of our leagues, and all of the emotions that have come along with that, and the bipolar medication we purchased for you at the local pharmacy.
Need it.
But it has been a crazy weekend. It is Monday, December 28th. We are the Fantasy Footballers, and we're back again. Week 16, nearly in the books, but for some people, a lot of people, tonight's going to matter quite a bit. You've got the Bengals and the Broncos tonight. Man, what a weekend.
Yeah, I'm glad that I'm able to be here today.
I'm surprised.
This is not a joke. This will sound like oh yeah, that's a silly, stupid thing to say, but it's not a joke. My wife and I were already planning my wardrobe for today in all black with a black veil.
Oh
after
my gosh!
After Cam Newton's performance, I was gonna come in just completely in mourning. Sackcloth and ashes.
Oh, my goodness.
And but then
Allen Robinson happened.
Tim Hightower and Allen Robinson were my only hope left, and I thought it was over. And Allen Robinson was doing nothing at all. And then he got a 90-yard touchdown, which was worth 17.5 points in our league. And there may or may not be a video of me doing high kicks in my underwear in my living room. So
this has not been made public because you don't want to be.
Yeah.
Someday he may run for political office.
Right. Gotta keep that one under wraps. But
yeah, I don't know what was worse yesterday. Some of the performances by top quarterbacks or dealing with Jason.
Yeah, after Cam,
that
was when I was ready to mourn.
We have this, you guys know what it is, Slack. We talk about the games. If we're not watching them together, we're always talking about the games live and getting ready for the show and talking about things that are going on. And Mike and I would be there and we'd be like, okay, touchdown for this guy in this game. We always telling each other what's going on if we're not watching. And every time that Jason normally would have contributed something of worth for the show, it was just like, Cam Newton's the worst. I hate Cam Newton. I hate life. Save me. And I get it. And if you have any doubt out there of the three of us being as invested in our leagues as you are in yours, let that be put to rest because we are and he was. And thank goodness I think that he's going to win.
Here's the story, Foot Clan. We need the mojo out there.
Oh no.
Emmanuel Sanders cannot score 32 points tonight. That he may score 30.
That is a matter of opinion.
Well, sure. I hope for everyone who needs Emmanuel Sanders, you need less than 32 points so I can root for you to get a good solid 25.
I honestly want to see the veil. Oh. At this point, I'm rooting for Emmanuel Sanders 33. No. I want to see the veil. I want to see him come in. And you'll probably drop about 40, 50 pounds over the next week of crying and sadness. So, yeah. All right, what do we got today? We've got our Fantasy Rewind. We're going to go over some of the big performances. Big shout-out and congratulations to all the Foot Clan members who essentially locked up their leagues. We got a billion tweets and a bunch of messages on the website, and hey, it's pretty rewarding to see you guys succeed in that way, and especially to see you do it with the likes of, a Blake Bortles at the helm with Hightower and Jordan Reed and
Cameron Artis-Payne.
And Kirk Cousins.
That's piecing it together.
You have to do that. And in the modern NFL, too, this season, with the injuries that we saw, I know I take responsibility for most of them.
You have at least 50%.
But at the same time, you just have to be, Jason said it all year long, but he started it at the beginning. during draft season. He said, you don't win your league at the draft. So many of our listeners have written us their roster from the draft.
Here, I got one handy.
Okay. Oh, you do?
Yeah, this is a good example of you don't win championships at your draft. This guy just won a championship with Denard Robinson, Cameron Artis-Payne, and Tim Hightower because he drafted Jamal Charles and Des Bryant and Peyton Manning and Arian Foster and Andre Ellington and Steve Smith Sr.
Oof.
And he won his championship.
He won his championship. It's a perfect illustration of what we're talking about. And that's why we're also a year-round podcast. We'll be recording in January, February, and beyond because you don't win your championship at the draft, but you'll get ready for your draft.
You win.
And you'll set the foundation for your season.
Guys like David Johnson and Cameron Artis-Payne, two perfect examples. We were talking about them about a month from now. Like in a couple weeks, that's when we started.
A month from now, a year ago.
Yes, a month from now, a year ago. That's when we started talking about those guys.
You're not fourth dimensionally, Marty.
So keep listening through the year. We'll try to entertain you through all the sad times of no real football going on.
And there were undoubtedly some sad times for people out there because I'm going to just bring this up. It's not a quick question. It's a quick comment, and you guys can react to it. Listen to this. These quarterbacks had their worst game of the season in Week 16.
What?
Big Ben, Tom Brady, and Cam Newton. Their worst fantasy game. These three had their second worst. Eli Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Tyrod Taylor.
Oh,
That's a lot.
Not everybody had Kirk Cousins, okay? A lot of people had these guys, and myself included. I had a couple questions, Cousins or Brady. I wasn't going to sit Brady down in my title game for Kirk Cousins. I definitely would have sat an Eli Manning or a Tyrod Taylor down for Kirk Cousins, but not Brady.
right.
Not Newton.
Oh, and I understand.
Not coming off a 55-point game from Newton, do I sit him down? And that's the sad part of fantasy football.
And we love every listener, whether or not you won your Foot Clan title. It doesn't matter. I mean, I was right with all the losers this week yesterday, and I still
no
could
one
be.
identifies with the losers more than you.
No one.
Traditionally, like
I am-
historically speaking.
Yeah, me and are we calling our listeners losers right now?
Well, you did. You said you love all the losers.
Yeah, lovable losers.
Well, it's good because I need to take one last shot at you before you secure the championship tonight.
It's
So-
gonna be that trophy's gonna be right.
However, there were a lot of listeners who made adjustments and said, "Hey, I survived Tom Brady today. I survived Big Ben today. I survived Cam Newton." Which you haven't had to do all year long. So, hey, if you want to get a hold of the show, stay with us all off season. Go on Twitter. We are at the FF Ballers. You can follow Mike directly at FF Hitman. You can follow Jason at JasonFFL. And you can follow me at Andy Holloway. You can visit our website, thefantasyfootballers.com. That's where people submit questions. You see our rankings. You see all of our off-season content, our video content. And you can watch that content on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. Subscribe on there. Some of the best video content gets put out between January and August because that's stuff that is going to be a lot of top lists, guys that we really like in the offseason, rookies.
Top list?
That's what I heard.
Top lists. TOPLISTS.
Watch the video.
I
We go
thought our
shirts
show
and skins.
was changing very much. Yeah. So I got to start
Hey.
working out.
Yeah, because it was right off of the video. It was like you can't just listen. You want to go to the video. Watch the video because
We
it's
need
gonna
more
be
spray
topless.
tans.
All right, I could have chose different words to illustrate top lists, but I'm going to leave the mystery out there because that's good.
We'll do a topless top
it's
list.
good advertising. Topless.
You
Yeah.
ready for some pale rolls? It's not a bakery. It's the footballers' topless.
That's good stuff right there. And now I am hungry and I would like some icing.
I already know my team name for my listener league next year is the Pale Rolls. Oh man, that was troubling. Okay, well, we got a show. We're gonna do more fantasy talk today. If we can overcome that, I think I've covered everything we need to cover in the beginning of the show. So let's go ahead and move on quickly.
Weekly Rewind.
Oh man. Well, here we
I
are.
was very confused.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I moved on like it was no big deal. All right, so the big news is not news yet, but I mean there are teams that are potentially going to sit guys down. We have a lot of people. We're congratulating owners, but there are several owners. I don't know what the percentage is, but a lot of leagues play into Week 17. We know that. And so we're still here. That's why we're here 5 days a week this week to talk about Week 17.
4.
5 shows.
Is there 5 shows?
Yeah.
Oof. All right.
I think there is. Am I wrong?
Well, I believe New Year's Day there will not be a live show.
Oh, because we're doing a longer one on the day before. Okay.
Yeah.
I apologize. 4 shows. But we're getting you ready for Week 17 nonetheless.
Absolutely.
And you have your title game in Week 17. So the big story there is, and why so many leagues don't play to Week 17 is because teams sit their guys. Now, there have been some very good breaks for those owners of players in those leagues. One being the fact that the Patriots and the Panthers both lost, making Week 17 extremely relevant to them because they have to win their games to secure home field throughout the playoffs. Otherwise, the Cardinals, or I guess the Bengals Broncos, could take that spot away.
If the Bengals lose tonight, will the Patriots secure the 1 seed?
No, because the Broncos are still in the mix.
Yeah, it's actually a great week. We can't stand Week 17 playoffs from a league format because you end up with these great guys who disappoint
or
in the
play
most
half a
important time.
game.
Yeah, and that's never fun. But this is actually a better year for it. There's not that many great teams that have locked. You want to know who can sit their starters?
Yeah.
The Washington Redskins.
Yeah.
You're good. You can sit your guys down for health. I don't imagine that they would do that. It would almost be embarrassing.
That's true, though. They can. The Packers and Minnesota Vikings game for next Sunday has actually been flexed to Sunday Night Football and is for the division title. So that game is now extremely relevant for fantasy owners because those players should be out there playing. I know that the Vikings, the first thing you heard from them after this big win this week was, we haven't beat the Packers. You ask us if we're having a good year. We haven't beat the Packers. We haven't won the division.
I think the situation that will most likely happen is that the winner of that game is going to, the next week, host that game again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're talking about an incredibly important Sunday Night Football game.
Exactly. So we will listen to the reports, listen to the coaches, relay that information to you so you're prepared for your fantasy championship game if you're playing in Week 17. A little bit of news on the injury front. Matt Hasselbeck forcefully retired by the opponent.
I tried to warn him.
I listened to that part of the show, and you pleaded for the human being of Matt Hasselbeck to be given a break.
He seems like a good guy.
You know he's playing next week. My news is this, that Charlie Whitehurst will likely start, but Matt Hasselbeck will somehow start that game because they're still in it.
Not like this. Like this.
Well, and there was a point in the game where Charlie Whitehurst got knocked out. So you're talking about 3 quarterbacks who got knocked out.
I got a phone call
for the a phone call to see if you're ready.
Yeah,
for
I got a phone call from Indianapolis.
But here, my point was, when you're drafting Philip Dorsett in the first round, maybe, just maybe, there's a problem with your offensive line in Indianapolis where all of your quarterbacks are dying. Just saying.
That's an issue.
General manager.
Well, they don't have like a really important quarterback to protect.
Well, no, they have about 4 that they can't protect. All right. Matt Forte was seen stretching out on the sidelines by trainers, didn't come back into the game. We don't know if he's significantly injured or not, but we'll see what happens next week. It could mean bigger things for Langford in terms of carry totals and, more importantly,
more touchdowns for Kadeem Carey.
Yeah, I mean, he's just let the hate mail begin for Kadeem Carey. Or let's just be honest. It needs to be filtered straight to John Fox. But if you're a Matt Forte owner, that was trouble for you. And then Ted Ginn had a very disappointing game. He went off the field, grabbed his leg briefly. He did come back into the game, but he didn't make an impact. We don't know how much that impacted his performance on the field yesterday, but obviously that team struggled mightily in what was Cam Newton's worst performance of the season, and they lost. And now they are fighting for that home field throughout the playoffs with the Arizona Cardinals, depending on what happens next week. I believe Carolina plays Tampa.
Yes.
And the Cardinals play the Seahawks.
And Carolina is at home, I believe.
Okay. And the Cardinals are at home as well.
Yep. And they will both be both games are in the afternoon. They have moved Carolina to the afternoon for the situation of both teams have to play without knowing if the other team has already won or lost.
Very smart.
So before we get to our fantasy stud muffins of the week, we want to thank our sponsor of the day, PokerStars.net. We've been talking about him all December because we like to play a little bit of poker, and there's no better place to do it than PokerStars.net. It is easy to get started. You just go to the website, click an install button, boom, boom, register, you're ready to go. You can play for free as long as you want. You start with 1,000 chips. You can reload for free a couple times an hour. Look, it's the biggest game in town at PokerStars.net. They're the largest poker site in the world. Hundreds of regular tournaments each day. And here's some other things about PokerStars. About how big are they? Over 10,000 players online at any time. That's a lot of people playing. You're going to get right into some matches. Over 2 million hands played per hour. Over 140 billion hands played to date. Number 4 here. It's easy to play while you're traveling. We're all traveling through the holiday season. Well, we're not. We're right here giving you fantasy news. But we know that you're on the road, and you can play on your computer, your iPhone, your iPad, your Android device. PokerStars.net gets it done for you. You can set up a club for you and your friends. You want to keep the crew together, the fantasy crew together. Make a PokerStars club. Play each other. So thank you to PokerStars.net for keeping us on the air.
This week's Fantasy Stud Muffins.
All right, so as we reflect on the guys that had big-time performances that genuinely won people fantasy leagues this week, I want to put them into a little bit of a year-long context for our listeners as well, because this is kind of the culmination of either a surprising year for a lot of guys or a surprising week. So we'll talk about them a little bit. But the big names, Cousins and Bortles.
Whee!
I mean, if there was ever a time when it was okay to kiss your cousins,
hey,
it would be this weekend. Because, man, 31 for 365, 4 touchdowns, and possibly the most memorable negative 4 yards of the season, what I'm titling Kneegate.
I've never seen anything like it. It was delightful.
You were on delay, and we were just we couldn't type in big enough capital letters.
I needed a font increase.
I did. I needed some Comic Sans 42 to.
Now, if you didn't
it had to be shameful. You had to be shameful.
If you didn't see the play and don't know what we're talking about, let me just ask you a question, listener. If the half is almost here and time is going to expire, but you're on like the 2-yard line
with no timeouts, should you A, throw a quick slant? Should you B, kick the field goal? Should you C, spike the ball, or D, take a knee, victory formation, and just stick it to him? Because he went with D, and he took a knee, and they went into the half with 0 points.
The best part was the two parts that stuck out to me beyond just the lunacy of the play, because something happened in his mind. But the play was supposed to be a fade to Pierre Garçon, and then if he catches it, it's a touchdown. If not, they got a second to kick a field goal. And the second he took the knee, Pierre Garçon just started marching off the field with his hands on his hips. He knew exactly what had happened. Jay Gruden was completely confused. Obviously didn't mean much to your fantasy day or it could have.
Yeah,
I guess it could have because they could have scored again.
I enjoyed watching Cousins right after the knee. Stand up and go, oh, what am I doing? And then try to spike the ball again.
He tries to run.
He's like, I don't know what I'm doing. His body was like trying to spike, trying to run, trying to hide all at the same time.
Yeah, you can't hide
from
that.
One of my favorite tweets of the weekend was somebody messaged. They said, thank goodness for the Colts play, that fake punt play. Otherwise, that would have been the worst play of the year for Cousins. And you're like, oh, man, thank you for reminding me of the Colts fake punt.
That was something special as well. And I thought.
See? I forgot about, hey, let's move every blocker out of the way. Snap the ball. We'll get them.
Somehow these plays just happen, and they're magnificent, and we should find a way to reward them.
Professionals. It is amazing.
We thought it happened yesterday with the coin flip with Matthew Slater in New England. Now, it came out that basically Belichick let him off the hook saying, hey, I wanted to kick. But
yeah, liar.
It's Belichick. So
he just did it a couple weeks ago to the Broncos.
Yeah. So anyways, Blake Bortles showing that he is indeed a fantasy force. 27 for 368 and 4 touchdowns. Big time game from him. he's going to be entering in. He's already a top 5 fantasy quarterback, and with the performances of some of the guys ahead of him, he may move up even more. Drew Brees had a really great performance where there were questions about his injury all week long. He came out through for over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. Brandon Cooks helped him.
And the same injury that Peyton Manning has missed several weeks with.
Yes.
Am I right?
You are correct. Yeah, he's got better doctors,
I guess.
I will say this, in the long-term dynasty context for Drew Brees, it is my belief that Drew Brees and Sean Payton will both be there next year. I have said this for a while. I know differing opinions on the show. Jason thinks that Sean Payton will be gone. I know there have been discussions about San Diego now with Sean Payton. Jason's conjecture has always been Indianapolis. Those things are very possible. I believe that they will both be back. I believe Brees will take a pay cut, and that team, I think you saw yesterday, Brees still can play the game of football at a very high level.
Well, and yesterday there was reports coming out of the Brees will be forced to take a discount. If he wants to stay in New Orleans, he's going to have to take a pay cut.
Which we've seen with Brady, we've seen with Manning.
But we'll see if he's willing to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So Ryan Fitzpatrick against New England, three more touchdowns. Those wide receivers, they do it every single game. 2 touchdowns for Marshall, 1 for Decker, and no one else ever catches any.
No.
But it's great. It's actually a really great thing to bank on when you're an owner of Decker or Marshall, because in the red zone, all the plays are drawn up for those guys. I mean, you have very few touchdowns scored by anybody else unless it's, a dump off to Bilal Powell, who, by the way, had a pretty good game again. Matthew Stafford, Mike's start of the week.
Yeah.
Had a very good game.
Yeah, he did. He was 29 for 301 yards, 2 touchdowns. He gets to play the Bears next week.
Yeah. That's not so bad.
No.
And Jason's start of the week, Brandon Whedon.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe not. But
no one's start of the week.
No one's start of the week. Yeah, apparently his mom actually started Matt Stafford in her league.
Sad.
In her league. So
Brandon Whedon, man.
Isn't this funny? Brandon Whedon and Ryan Mallett got to start some games for different teams yesterday. Ryan Mallett looked like he was happy to have a job.
Yeah, and he got it done.
Yeah, he did.
That was a shocking game, the Ravens versus the Steelers, if you watched any of that.
2 of the Steelers' losses.
Oh, that is one thing I wanted to say. I was going to talk about before we started the show, and I said let's just wait and start the show. Divisional matchups, you need to throw everything out the window. St. Louis went to Seattle and dominated. The Seattle Seahawks. Not the Seattle Seahawks from week 1 or week 3 or week 5. The Seattle Seahawks that were extremely efficient in the pocket with Russell Wilson and throwing the ball downfield and blowing people out of the water, got blown out of the water. And it showed that Seattle has some weaknesses on that offensive line, that if a team can exploit them with the pass rush, that team cannot do what it's done over the past few weeks. And we know the matchups that they had over the past few weeks were different than the St. Louis Rams, right? They were weaker. Let's just put it that way.
That's my point, was going to be the offensive line. We saw them earlier in the year when they were losing games was because of the offensive line. If you remember that primetime game against the Lions, where Russell Wilson was running for his life every single play, and in that game they happened to just manage one scramble for a touchdown or for a deep pass that turned into a touchdown. That's what happened this week. The Rams, their defensive line was just eating them alive. So that is a concern for the Seahawks moving forward.
And it goes to show too, with Aaron Rodgers having the second worst game of the year, their offensive line has the same type of issues, and they suffered more injuries this week. We know better than anybody as Arizona Cardinal fans from years past that ignoring the offensive line in the draft or having issues on the offensive line, it doesn't matter how good of a quarterback you are.
It gets you.
Yeah. Russell Wilson, would you
run.
say Russell Wilson is above average in terms of evasiveness in the pocket?
Yes.
It still doesn't matter.
No.
These are professional athletes, professional defensive linemen and linebackers that can run pretty fast.
Yeah, if they're in practice.
If you don't block them.
Hey, Russell, do a 3-on-1 drill. See if you can get away from these 3 NFL defensive backs. He's going to lose.
Yeah. So, wide receivers.
Julio
Jones. Hey, always start your studs.
He came through.
Unless their names are Brady and Big Ben. And it is a dangerous dance, but Julio was humongous, literally, on that play. I mean, Matt Ryan, Have I not been saying this all year?
Throw deep.
Throw
to
the
Julio.
ball deep to the giant man who catches the ball.
You've been
It
saying
drives
it all
me
year?
crazy. And they just threw it up to him. He had Luke Kuechly on him, and he had Kirk Coleman on him. It didn't matter. He just jumped, high pointed it, and then he ran it into the end zone. And that counts as 7 points or 6 points.
It was like Luke Kuechly was wearing a football hat.
Oh,
And
right.
Julio
And
Jones
he just
said-
took the hat off.
Took his party hat. Said, yoink. Thank you.
That's a pretty good way to describe it. 9 for 178 and a touchdown. Brandon Marshall, 8 for 115, 2 touchdowns. Sets a career high in touchdowns this year under Ryan Fitzpatrick's, with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Beardliness. Allen Hurns and Allen Robinson.
Monster games.
Combo maker.
Oh, that 90-yard touchdown.
Yes. See,
I'll
this is
remember it forever.
This is exactly what I mean. You're a little focused.
I'm a little focused, but I'm
All these names,
very happy.
and you remember one.
Oh, no. No, during the game, I remembered 2, Allen Hurns and Denard Robinson, whom I hated every time that they touched the ball because they had half of the right name. Go on.
Oh, because one's
Yes.
an Allen and one's a
yes.
Robinson.
Doug Baldwin.
I don't know if I
still-
want you to win or lose tonight. All right.
Doug Baldwin had a good game.
All right, you guys know what touchdown number that is for Doug Baldwin, right?
Remind me.
Oh, I want to see if you know.
72?
14?
14.
14, yeah.
14 touchdowns for Doug Baldwin, 8 for 118 and a touchdown. Jordan Matthews had another hold on.
Hit
Hold
the
on.
button.
This man,
I tweeted out about Jordan Matthews. I
waste
said,
management is
I
his
said-
new nickname.
I said sanitation engineer superstar. That guy gets it done.
It's
when,
incredible.
when the game
It's
is out
incredible.
of hand.
Yes.
He gets it.
When the game is done, he gets it done. DeAndre Hopkins.
It's the game after the game.
Right,
Jordan
right.
Matthews.
The game after the game. Led by your team captains, Jordan Matthews, Danny Woodhead,
And Austin Safarian Jacobs.
and Austin Safarian, with 1 second left. Told you he was great. All right, DeAndre Hopkins, Brandon Cooks, Dontrell Inman, Pierre Garçon, other guys that got it done. Cooks was my start of the week.
Yeah,
Not that it took much insight to start that guy the way he's been playing.
Brandon Cooks has been balling out.
Did you happen to
Balling
see
out.
his catch amongst
Oh,
5 defenders
the one where where Drew Brees threw it right over the guy's hand, and then
under 3 other hands?
it was like you had to choreograph that and film it.
What was
6
the movie
times
where
to
they
get that
bend the
shot right.
where they bend the bullet?
Wanted.
Oh.
Yeah,
Wanted,
Wanted. Yeah, that's what happened.
Well, I was going to go with the like a Mission Impossible laser web.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the ball just found the right trajectory, right path, right through for Brandon Cooks.
All right. So, anybody else you want to talk? It was nice to see Hopkins come through for fantasy owners when
Well,
it
he
mattered.
had Brandon Whedon throwing the ball, of course.
So it was kind of a given, yeah. Garçon also, he made his mark in that game for sure. Garçon, to me, is a lot like an Anquan Bolden now, where, it looks like his speed isn't there anymore. I don't see separation on the underneath routes from Garçon the way I used to, but he's just a solid, dependable wide receiver and a good complement to Jordan Reed and Deshaun Jackson as the Redskins begin their Super Bowl run.
Yeah. And Dontrell Inman, if you're going to rely on that from Dontrell Inman, you should not. After watching him play, he's just, man, that guy drops a lot of passes.
Running backs that came through this week, none more important than Deangelo Williams and Tim Hightower. These guys were money. Deangelo in part because Big Ben wasn't, and because of some fortuitous down on the one situation there where Williams had 2 touchdowns. He came through in a big way. He also caught 6 passes for 53 yards. Tim Hightower was monstrous, turning back the clock, 27 for 122, 2 touchdowns, 3 for 47 through the air.
And CJ, we tweeted out, so hopefully you were following us, CJ Spiller, when the news was pouring out, like, Spiller's going to be inactive.
Yep.
And we're not sure what that means for his future in New Orleans. It can't feel good.
Oh, he's
when-
got to be gone.
When Travaris Cadet comes in and plays very well, including a 40-plus yard touchdown catch from Brees. And you're like, well, CJ Spiller is he just not that good? Or he just can't stay healthy?
Square peg, round hole situation there for Spiller in New Orleans. There's no way he's back. They said he was banged up all year, I think, to justify the healthy scratch. The healthy scratch. All right.
The unhealthy Scratch.
So who else? I mean, big surprise this week for everybody was the performance of Frank Gore in fantasy football with 2 touchdowns, 15 for 85. And you also had big games from Latavius Murray. David Johnson had a very big game in total yards, got another touchdown. Buck Allen had a very good game. Any of these guys that you want to talk about?
Move for next week. I think Buck Allen is interesting. I don't know what his matchup is, but you gotta believe he has worked himself back into the good graces of Coach Harbaugh for Baltimore. Do you guys have trust in him moving forward to Week 17 after coming off?
It really depends on the Bengals situation for sitting guys next week. After what happens tonight, if they're still in it, then I don't love Buck Allen.
Yeah, I agree. I was just going to bring up the Bengals. That's their matchup in Week 17. I don't really like that matchup for his skill set.
That's fair.
Latavius Murray had a big game.
He did. He had a great matchup against the Chargers, the worst running defense, not the worst, the worst or the second worst. I can't remember who's statistically worse. Them or the Browns.
I think the Browns are the worst.
So good matchup.
He did what Lamar Miller could not do against the San Diego Chargers.
And Lamar Miller
received carries.
Well, yeah, Lamar received 9 of them and got 12 yards in that game. So let's not let him off the hook.
Okay, that's fair.
But Latavius Murray had a big game. Charles Sims making his contributions as normal. He's been a very reliable, Bilal Powell, James White type of guy this whole entire year.
Helps when Doug Martin fumbles twice.
Yeah, that's true. Anybody else? Jason did mention Lamar Miller had a pretty good week on a very, really bad team that's going to have a lot of change in this offseason.
Jerick McKinnon, the game was very out of hand, so who knows how hard the Giants defense was actually playing. But that's 2 good games in a row for McKinnon. This is more speaking to dynasty.
Let's say long term
dynasty or a keeper league for the people who have been holding on to McKinnon, just hoping because McKinnon's his athletic measurables are just top of the chart. The guy is an athletic freak.
He reminds me a lot of Christine Michael.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in play style, but in what's happened to him. Measurables off the chart. These big end-of-game runs. Michael had a bunch of those in years gone by where he'd come in for 3 or 4 runs and bust off a big run. Joey Randall did it too, in Dallas where he'd come in and break up a D. But, yeah, McKinnon has a lot of upside and potential, and it's nice to have him behind Adrian Peterson right now, and is definitely a dynasty consideration. Hey, both of the best tight ends this week, war number 86.
Whee! Oh, man. Rule 86.
Got it done. And we meet Jordan Reed, but also Zach Ertz.
Yeah, Zach Ertz finally flashing some of that upside. Finally.
13 for 122, even had a couple drops, didn't get in the end zone. But Jordan Reed was 9 for 129 and 2. At one point in this game, I believe a listener tweeted out that he was on pace for about 380 yards and 8 touchdowns.
And
not bad.
For Ertz, that's also including a completely botched throw by Bradford where Ertz had scrambled past a broken defense and would have scored.
That would have been like a 50-yard touchdown.
Yeah, but Jordan Reed, monster. Just a monstrous. His arrow is pointing way up
long term
for next year. Now let's talk immediate. I would not be surprised at all if Jordan Reed sits out Week 17. When you're talking about resting, I think that Washington is going to full rest a lot of people. They have some linemen who are banged up, I think will be rested. If you rest linemen, you rest Kirk Cousins. You don't put him out there behind backups. So if you are a Washington skill player owner like D-Jax, I mean, these guys have been banged up, so you need to prepare for them not to play this week.
Rule 86 is that if Jordan Reed is healthy, you play him, because the reason that rule exists is because he's so often not healthy. He's had a pretty healthy year this year, but that's a really good point. I mean, if I'm the coach, Reed is important to your playoff chances. I would rest him as well.
And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention a few more names at tight end. Vance McDonald, Travis Kelce, and Delaney Walker still got it done. Horrible game for Tennessee. We mentioned that he might take a bump down. It did seem like he wasn't being targeted early. Kind of got it done with the quantity of catches in PPR. He probably didn't do much for you in standard. But Kelce, he flashed again. Scored a touchdown.
I was yaying for Vance McDonald.
Oh, were you?
Yeah. Travis Kelce, That was nice for him to finally
And
get
the
in the end zone.
Cardinals.
Thanks, Kelsey.
The Cardinals defense, Jason pointed it out, in standard leagues.
The number one scoring fantasy option was the Arizona Cardinals defense, I believe credited with 9 sacks. Couple fumble recoveries.
One of the things we like to bring up here, and, as NFL fans out there, you remember, who Dwight Freeney is. And I believe he's on the Cardinals now. He was signed to a veteran contract, much like John Abraham was signed last year to the Cardinals. They kind of signed these over-the-hill, quote-unquote, pass rushers. But one of the interesting things about Dwight Freeney is that his contract is incentive-laden, and he gets paid per sack.
Yeah.
And that's it.
You go out, you want $100,000? Well, just go tackle that guy behind the line of scrimmage.
And he had 3 yesterday, and I believe his contract is at $200,000.
It's at $200,000 now
per sack, and so it's just every time he does it, I picture him going to the sideline and
getting a check.
A big old one of those giant sweepstakes checks. They walk over and he files it away, and then he goes back out on the field and gets another $200K. I mean, that's just a nice way to incentivize.
It's like the mouse that comes and gets his cheese, and then he goes and does his thing and gets his cheese.
Right.
That's Dwight Freeney.
So, all right, let's move on.
Whoa, you good?
Pooped in his big boy pants.
Our rally cry against kickers. Blair Walsh. Blair Walsh probably won some weeks by himself because he was a beast.
Better than most running backs.
I'm saying if you get
Nerf kickers.
If you get bonus points for 50-yard field goals, then Blair Walsh scored you a boatload, a scientific boatload points.
You done with the kicker talk?
It need to be brought up, man.
All right.
You got to give it where it's due. If you're going to talk about defense, you got to talk about the kickers.
Oh, it makes sense to transition from kickers into
poop.
All right, quarterbacks. We've talked about it already.
Cam Newton,
Big Ben, and Tom Brady had their worst games of the season. And we saw this last year from Andrew Luck. He had his worst games of the season in the fantasy playoffs. You can't not start them, right?
Yeah, that's where sometimes I'm not sure that it's better necessarily to stream than to have this stud, but that is one of the nice things about taking the streaming strategy is you don't ever get locked in on that. This guy's got either a bad matchup or there's this guy with a juicy matchup and I just can't play him over the guy I invested heavily in at the draft. That's a freedom.
A good point.
It's
such a good
freedom in streaming where you go, I'm just going to play the guy that I think has the best chance this week, and you start Kirk Cousins, and you're happy because you did it.
You make a great point. You get locked into those other guys. Man, I loved having Tom Brady as my quarterback for half the year this year. I loved it. It was great to lock and load him. But if I was streaming a guy and I didn't have Brady on my roster, I might have ended up in better shape during my championship year.
Yeah, Brady didn't win anybody a championship. He might have helped them get there, but you had to overcome Brady on your roster this week to win that championship.
Yeah, so I don't, it's not probably maybe it's worth talking about these guys for next week a little bit.
Sure.
Big Ben has alternated these monstrous games where you're saying to yourself, boy, if this team got in the playoffs, they're going to win a Super Bowl. And then he's got the Browns next week.
That's a bonus.
So, and they have to win, right? Because they need to win in order to get into the playoffs. Right now they're on the outside, and if the Jets take care of their business.
Yeah, if the Jets beat the Bills next week, then the Jets
it's over. Yeah, it's over.
And I wish I could remember who was.
Isn't that ironic, though? Because Rex Ryan now has to go up against his old team.
I didn't realize.
And can keep them from the playoffs with a win.
Wow. That's
good TV.
I had heard people talking about they wish that game was the flex game instead of the NFC North. But I wish I could remember who was tweeting this out because I would give them the credit. But they were talking about Ben Roethlisberger on the road is not the same fantasy quarterback that he is at home. It has been quite some time before he has since he has thrown more than 2 touchdowns on the road. I'm trying to recall how long it's been. I know for sure this year he didn't do it, but it's an interesting stat when you look at Big Ben on the road, not putting up those monster. You get used to these monster games from Roethlisberger, like 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns. Not when he's on the road. So that may be a trend that we need to take into account next year when you think about Roethlisberger as a high draft pick.
Yeah, and it is, again, it's a divisional matchup. And we've seen, Cleveland, they didn't beat Kansas City, but they stayed competitive in that game. Mind you, Kansas City shelled up and ran like 9 plays in the second half or something ridiculous. But.
So looking at that, I mean, when you actually pull up his season game log, it is astounding because at Baltimore, 0 touchdowns, home against Denver, 3 touchdowns, on the road against Cincinnati, 0, home against Indy, 4, on the road, Seattle, 1, at home, 3. I mean, it goes pretty much all year. But now, this next week, he's on the road, but he's not against Denver and Cincinnati and Seattle. He's against Cleveland. What are you doing with Big Ben?
I'd be rolling him out there.
Yeah, I'm looking back to last year, and he did towards the end of the year at the Bengals, he had 3 touchdowns. So it's more a stat of this year. But I would still have confidence starting him against the Browns because the Browns' defense has just been so bad.
They're like Ravens. They're like the Ravens D.
When we bring up the Ben Roethlisberger story,
I see what you did.
We have made a horrible mistake by not well, hold on, let me see here.
What?
Oh, we're getting to
I
it.
never
Okay.
make horrible mistakes.
All right, he's in there. Never mind. Okay, we'll move on. I thought we forgot somebody, but he's in there. Big Ben, bad game. Aaron Rodgers next week. A division on the line and an offensive line that is a sieve right now and wide receivers. Let me just say this. I know it's not been said before. Devontae Adams stinks.
Yeah.
He stinks. I mean,
Oh, Adams.
I'm sorry to have to say it in that way and just reverberate what Jason has been saying since before everyone knew it. But, man, the guy doesn't make plays. He doesn't make plays. And there's no separation for those wide receivers. It's kind of a weird thing because he's sitting here about to win the division, go to the playoffs, and I don't even know what the team is. I really don't. I don't know who they are. All right, so who else do we need to talk about here? Brady next week, still relevant to him.
And
Yeah.
Who are they playing?
The Patriots take on the Dolphins next week in Miami.
Yeah, that's a
Division game.
Yeah, and certainly you have to take into account, but Tom Brady, and we could have an Edelman sighting. We could have an Amendola sighting.
Things should be better for Tom Brady next week.
Yeah, this
was a very important game for the Jets. The Jets took care of business in this one, and they have a very, very good defense. This is not the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, if you're a Brady owner playing in Week 17, you're very happy with that coin toss going the wrong way in overtime.
Well, there was also some conspiracy theorists on the Twitter, as they tend to be there.
What, that the ref just said you're kicking?
No, that Bill Belichick wants the Steelers not in the playoffs.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, I can't.
That's delightful.
Here's the thing: you can't. You're like, no way. But it's Bill Belichick. This guy is very, very smart.
Wow. Well,
they're around. I'm not buying into it, but
all right, that's funny though. It's a funny storyline. All right, running backs that did not perform for you this week. Well, that would be everybody from Seattle, including Christine Michael, Bryce Brown, and nothing from them. 6 for 6 for Michael, 7 for 9 for Brown. James Starks didn't do a thing against Arizona.
That's not true. He fumbled.
I'm sorry. Antonio Andrews
Also fumbled.
And Shane Vereen didn't do anything. Nothing to speak of really there. I mean, do we see long-term value in any of these guys? I know I don't.
No.
Yeah, but if you're, so like let's say you're in the Week 17, you're scrambling for the running backs, and you're looking at the Seattle, the backfield. You can't trust them. They're with the offensive line woes re-showing once again. They have to go on the road against Arizona. I'm avoiding it.
A game more relevant to Arizona probably than Seattle.
I am avoiding it.
You know, a guy that I think also, this type of week is where the pooped in the big boys' pants aren't just the guys that put up nothing, but the guys that didn't do it in championship week. You know, a Doug Martin who looked like he was going to have such a great, juicy matchup, got 49 yards, and he got a touchdown, but fumbled twice, didn't perform the way that you needed him to.
Matt Forte, 50 yards, no touchdown.
Yep,
Right.
exactly. I mean, those are guys where we got a lot of listeners that I'm sure are angry at their running backs who underperformed and stunk it up in the time that they needed it the most.
Chris Ivory didn't do anything.
Yeah,
Not that we didn't say that on the show, but, another bad game for Ivory. They're not championship performances from those guys.
Yeah.
That's the way to say it. So wide receiver, to me, the biggest name by far, bar none, biggest disappointment of the week.
Good friend of the show.
Martavis Bryant. Absolutely terrible. You look on paper, Baltimore against Martavis Bryant. I'll be the first to admit it. I had Antonio Brown and Martavis Bryant at the very top of my wide receiver list this week. Those were guys that I thought you could count on without question. Big Ben, I think, a bunch of listeners mentioned the same thing on Twitter. This is a team that dominated Denver in the passing game.
Yeah,
so now you're going to face a team in Baltimore. Your season's on the line, and Martavis Bryant gets one catch.
Well,
after 10 catches against Denver's. I didn't know how to explain this one. I don't.
There was zero signs of a bad game coming for Bryant. In fact, all signs would point to him having a monster game.
Double digits in 5 of 6.
And then you're going up against the Ravens secondary. The NFL, where crazy things happen
every week.
And Ryan Mallett outperforms Big Ben. Crazy things.
Crazy things.
Ted
Ginn Jr. is another guy who he was my start of the week because he got 14 targets last week, has been on fire with Cam, going up against Atlanta, who they just blew out a couple of weeks ago. Shutout, right? It was like 38-0.
Yep.
And then Carolina. I think, who pooped in their big boy pants? The Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, Olsen owners weren't happy. Newton owners weren't happy. Ginn owners, Cap owners.
Yeah. Carolina Panthers fans.
Their defense owner.
I had their defense. I had Olsen and I had Cam. I lived I hate Carolina this week.
The trifecta. Yeah, that's true. And then, sit of the week, Amari Cooper. Terrible performance.
Oof.
Running on one leg, maybe.
Yeah, he clearly looked hobbled.
And Randall Cobb.
And hopefully Emmanuel Sanders. Just going to give a little pre-pooped.
So, Randall Cobb, let's talk Randall Cobb longer term.
Happy to do so.
Is there concern, or is this...
No, okay. That's more of a joke. Because
is this a matter of Jordy Nelson comes back and hopefully he returns to form? Nelson's a bit of an older receiver coming off of an ACL surgery, which we know guys can come back from that now. But if Nelson can come back and into form, is everything A-okay up in Green Bay?
It's going to go a long way to helping that situation.
That was a triple rhyme. I just want you to know.
Is it going to be okay in Green Bay? It's going to go a long way?
Yes.
Well done.
You are correct.
Dr. Seuss level
my mind
of rhymes.
is exploding.
Right
now I wouldn't start Randall Cobb on a boat. I wouldn't start him
in a moat. He looks like he's playing in a moat.
3 for 15. I mean, I've said it before. He doesn't look the same to me. And you mix that with nobody over the top that gives you any danger, no running game that's been consistent all year long. When I saw Randall Cobb pile up numbers is when you see Aaron Rodgers pile up numbers in terms of first down. That was the biggest number that jumped out to me. I don't remember the exact number, but last year their efficiency on third down conversion was league best, and this year they're not doing it. Aaron Rodgers, the first 4 games of the season was something like 73% accuracy-wise. Since then, it's in the 50s.
Oof.
This is a different offense. They can change play callers all they want, but if he's on his back or if his receivers can't get any separation, you can't throw it to Randall Cobb. I'd be covering Randall Cobb. Yeah, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be covering him and let Devontae Adams and Aberderis and all those guys drop the ball.
Yeah, the hope is that Jordy Nelson makes it better for Randall Cobb. But when we're talking about keeper leagues and you got to choose, do I keep this guy versus others? You don't keep Randall Cobb because what you're doing when you hold him is you're saying there's a chance that something could fall his way and then he could be good again.
Right.
I mean, that's like you've got like this triangle.
Let me ask you this though,
for a decent player.
Similar situation. Cobb's obviously younger, but not super young. If you had to keep Larry Fitzgerald or Randall Cobb?
Ooh.
That's a great question.
Who would you keep? Because both have a Pro Bowl quarterback. It's supposed to be a prolific offense.
Yeah, but one of them's younger and one's coming into their golden years.
Well, in addition,
Both
yeah.
slot receivers.
But in addition to that, you have two young guys for the Cardinals in John Brown and Michael Floyd who have shared, their injuries this year, and presuming health for next year, that puts Larry into where he's been lately versus where he was at the beginning of the year. For that reason, I think
and
I
lately,
would keep.
lately
For that
it's
reason,
not
I
been
think
good.
I would keep Cobb, but I would much, hopefully,
That's an interesting question.
I'd go Mike Evans. Is my answer.
Do you guys remember how long Hines Ward played, by chance?
Oh, like 25 years.
Well,
That guy
because
played-
I want to see, because Bruce Arians was Hines
Right.
Ward's offensive coordinator. Hines Ward was a very valuable slot receiver for many, many years in the NFL. Could block the way Larry can block now. Larry's 32. I'm just curious to see, what his career arc
Hines
looks like.
played a long time.
But yes, Larry's last half of the year has been just paled in comparison to his first half of the year because of the health of Michael Floyd and John Brown and that offense and David Johnson now. So, all right, where are we? Let's
Tight
see.
ends.
Tight ends. Fantasy face-off?
Yes, you were absolutely correct with Richard Rodgers, 1 catch for 2 yards. Something I did not account for was 9 sacks from Aaron Rodgers. That was what I did not see
Third
coming.
straight week with 1 catch.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I judged the fantasy face-off well. Gave it to Andy, and Richard Rodgers stunk.
Yeah, stunk by association.
Yeah, they say that when the entire team is that bad, then Richard Rodgers is not going to be good.
Ben Watson let people down because it was a shootout, and the guy had 1 catch. So they're going to replay the game, give him another shot at performing for your – no, I'm getting word that they're not going to do that. All right, Jason Witten closes the year with 1 catch.
Good. We've said for
As
a long
in closes
time.
the year, or
No, we're just saying, we've said for a long time that Witten is the type of player that is owned and started in way too many leagues. And hopefully, if you were listening to this show, he wasn't playing for you. I think one of the guys that hurt people is actually Antonio Gates, who I think was a great start this last week against Oakland, and he didn't get it done at all. 2 catches for 11 yards. There are plenty of championship teams that said, ooh, Gates, juicy matchup. He had 3 weeks of 6 catches in a row. Why would he not be used again against one of the worst teams against tight end? Roll out Gates, but it went Ladarius Green's way that game. Wrong tight end, same game, so no Gates love.
all right, we need to spend some time on the Monday night game because this has fantasy implications, championship implications for a lot of owners. You have a lot of names in this game, from Jeremy Hill to Gio Bernard, A.J. Green situation, Marvin Jones, and then on the other side of the ball, Emmanuel Sanders, Demaryius Thomas, the running backs for Denver. What is the big storyline for you guys? How do you see this game shaping up tonight? Because you have McCarron, you've got Osweiler taking on one another on Monday Night Football.
I hope that the storyline sticks to what I said early in the week, because you have what you just said. You've got the 2 backup quarterbacks, the 2 great defenses. What we saw the Bengals do last week was they got away from the playbook where they're just passing it the majority of the time and still having a decent running game. And last week they focused on the run. Both backs got the ball a ton. A.J. McCarron only threw it, I think, around 21 times. And I'm hoping we see more of that, a real slow, drag it down, defensive, low-scoring battle. Just because of Emmanuel Sanders. But I said that before this week.
No,
so.
I agree. It's when you're looking on paper and just at the different matchups throughout the game, you can't feel confident really in anybody. My highest confidence level would be the Denver receivers of Demaryius and Sanders.
Likewise, yeah.
But other than that, I mean, AJ Green is an elite wide receiver, so he could get it done, but he's got this back problem that knocked him out last week. There was word that maybe he wouldn't even play this game. You're looking at news. What's the latest on Green?
There's nothing newer
On track
than
to play.
Yeah, exactly. There was that thing saying he was on track to play. AJ Green is a guy that I think a lot of championship teams have already gone away from. They sat him because he was a late game You didn't know his health. He was in a bad matchup to boot with a bad back. I don't expect good things from A.J. Green, and hopefully you started someone else and it worked out well.
And if you didn't make that decision to start somebody else, you're probably locked into A.J. Green now.
Yeah.
And so you're going to ride him regardless of what we tell you this morning. Maybe you have a backup plan.
Yeah, and no backup plan in this game is going to be better than A.J. Green.
But I guess that would be something to tell people. If you have an open waivers and you need some backup plans for a guy like A.J. Green, then you need to think about who. You need to think about, Marvin Jones is probably owned. And so then you start thinking about Sanu, or the other side of the ball. You start thinking of Vernon Davis and Owen Daniels, a Latimer. Those are the pass catchers that you can consider in this type of a game.
Yeah, but it will be interesting for the Bengals just to see how does A.J. McCarron do against an elite level defense like Denver. So at least it'll be interesting to watch. It could be a
Do we remember the over-under in this game?
game.
Because that's what I was going to say.
I think it's got to
it
be low.
I think it was 40.5, but I'll
You
look
see the score in the Jets, or I'm sorry, in the Bills game? That's what I think this game might end up like. The Bills, what was it, 16-9 or something like that?
Very
I
low score.
sure hope so.
Okay, we're back on Jason's team. We asked you to bear with us as we find a new
It's gone lower. It's 30.
host to the show while Jason goes off and does whatever he's going to do with this championship trophy. And
because it's very possible that Jason's physical body just evaporates in a spontaneous combustion. He just becomes a being of light and floats around.
I thought you'd say he'd just be absorbed. He'd be in the trophy.
But he might do that.
And we just carry him around with us.
Put the trophy on the seat.
I picture him just floating around because he has left the plane of physical existence.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of medical bills upcoming.
Either way, is your heart healthy?
Yeah.
Now, let me just figure one thing out. If you secure your title tonight,
Yes.
what foods will you be eating over the next
celebration dinner.
24 hours?
Whew, that's a great question. I'm definitely having some pumpkin pie. I mean, there's going to be.
Wait, do you have that available to you right
now? It
now?
is at my home.
Okay, I thought
Yeah.
you'd make one.
Oh,
That's
from Christmas?
Yep, I got a little bit of pumpkin pie. I also have pumpkin pin rolls, which are delicious. Those are the best. Oreo double stuffs. We've got plenty of them
pumpkin
here.
Oreos.
Pumpkin Oreos.
Where are you taking us to lunch to celebrate?
Kentucky Fried Chicken, bro. No, we're going all out. We're going high class. We're going Raisin Cane's.
Yeah.
Get that
works
Raisin
for
Cane's
me.
love. We love Raisin Cane's here.
Actually, we're going there in a minute. So, all right, that does it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow. We'll talk some waivers for your Week 17 championship teams. We'll reflect more on the season. We'll probably talk more food, and we'll
Let's
medicate
get it
Jason.
done.
Go
All right.
Demarius Thomas!
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at www.thefantasyfootballers.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.